Look at a map of South America. Brazil takes up almost half of the continent. That's 3.5 million square miles, bigger than the entire continent of Australia, larger than the contiguous United States. How did one country end up controlling that much land? The answer involves a pope drawing a line in 1494, freelance explorers who completely ignored it, a treaty in 1750 that legalized the theft, a king who fled across the Atlantic and decided to stay, and his son who refused to give it all back. But it almost didn't happen. Brazil was supposed to be a tiny coastal strip. By the rules of European colonization in the 1500s, Spain should have owned almost everything south of Panama. Brazil should be the size of California. Let's rewind to 1494. 2 years after Columbus, Spain and Portugal are the two superpowers of European exploration. Both want exclusive rights to colonize the New World. Both threaten war over rival claims. The Pope intervenes. Pope Alexander VI, a Spanish-born pope, by the way, born Rodrigo Borgia in Valencia, draws a line on a map, running north to south 370 leagues west of the Cape Verde Islands. Everything east of that line belongs to Portugal, everything west to Spain. That line cut through what would become Brazil. Specifically, only the eastern bulge of Brazil, the coast of modern-day Pernambuco and Bahia, was on the Portuguese side. The vast Amazon basin, the Pantanal wetlands, the entire interior of the continent, all of that should have been Spanish. If history had played out by the rules of 1494, Brazil today would be a country roughly the size of California. Portuguese-speaking, yes, but tiny. The rest of South America would be one massive Spanish empire, possibly speaking a single dialect, possibly never breaking into separate nations. The continent would look completely different. But Portugal had a problem. The Pope's line gave them only a sliver of land. And Portugal, a small kingdom on the edge of Europe with maybe 1 million people in 1500, desperately needed colonial wealth to compete with Spain. They needed more land. Enter the Bandeirantes. Domino 1, the 1640s. Portuguese explorers, mostly based in São Paulo, started pushing west into the interior of the continent. They called themselves Bandeirantes, flag bearers. Officially, they hunted gold and indigenous slaves. Unofficially, they were claiming land for the Portuguese king. These weren't government expeditions. They were private, often brutal, freelance operations. Men like Antônio Raposo Tavares led expeditions that lasted years, covering thousands of miles. Tavares' most famous bandeira, between 1648 and 1652, covered over 6,000 miles, from São Paulo all the way to the foothills of the Andes, and back via the Amazon. He planted Portuguese flags in places that, by international law, belonged to Spain. By 1700, the Bandeirantes had penetrated as far west as modern Peru. They'd founded settlements, traded with indigenous tribes, established what looked like de facto Portuguese claims over Spanish territory. The Spanish crown protested, repeatedly. The Spanish governors of Peru and Charca sent furious letters to Madrid. Madrid sent furious letters to Lisbon. Lisbon shrugged. Why? Because Lisbon had no real control over the Bandeirantes either. These were freelance frontiersmen, far from any colonial authority. The Portuguese crown couldn't stop them, and didn't really want to. Every Portuguese flag planted in the interior was potentially future Portuguese land. Domino 2, 1750. The Treaty of Madrid. After 50 years of border disputes and military skirmishes, Spain and Portugal sat down to renegotiate the line drawn in 1494. The principle they agreed on was uti possidetis, Latin for as you possess. Whoever was actually living on the land kept it. This was catastrophic for Spain. Because the Bandeirantes had been illegally occupying Spanish land for a century, the Treaty of Madrid recognized all that occupation. Portugal's colony tripled in size. Overnight, on paper, Spain protested. The Spanish king actually tried to cancel the treaty in 1761. There's another treaty, El Pardo, that briefly reversed Madrid, but by then it was too late. The settlements were established. The Portuguese settlers weren't going to leave their farms. The maps had been redrawn. The Vatican accepted the new borders. Spain didn't really understand what it had lost until decades later. The Amazon basin, one of the richest ecosystems on Earth, containing 20% of the world's fresh water, and the largest rainforest on Earth, was now Portuguese. Domino 3, 1808. Napoleon invades Portugal. The Portuguese royal family, the entire court, around 15,000 people, including the Queen Mother, who was clinically insane, flees Lisbon and sails to Rio de Janeiro at escort of the British Royal Navy. For the next 13 years, Brazil isn't a colony. It's the seat of the Portuguese Empire. The capital of Portugal in 1808 is in Rio de Janeiro. The king, Dom Juan VI, governs the entire Portuguese Empire from Brazil. He opens Brazilian ports to international trade, a massive economic shift that suddenly puts Brazil at the center of Atlantic commerce. He founds the first Bank of Brazil, the first Royal Library, the first Royal Botanical Garden. He invites European scientists, artists, and engineers to Rio. The city transforms from a colonial backwater into an imperial capital. When Napoleon is defeated in 1815, Don Juan doesn't immediately go home. He stays in Rio for 6 more years. Brazil, in his mind, is now the heart of the Portuguese realm. In 1815, he even elevates Brazil to the rank of kingdom, making the United Kingdom of Portugal, Brazil, and the Algarves. Brazil is now equal to Portugal itself. Domino 4, 1822. After 13 years in Brazil, Don Juan finally returns to Lisbon under pressure from the Portuguese parliament. He leaves his son, Pedro, behind as Prince Regent of Brazil. But the Portuguese parliament, jealous of Brazilian autonomy and economic power, tries to demote Brazil back to colonial status. Pedro is furious. The Portuguese demand he return to Lisbon. They demand Brazilian ports be closed again. They demand the Bank of Brazil be subordinated to Lisbon. They essentially demand Brazil go back to being a backwater. On September 7, 1822, on the banks of the Ipiranga River in São Paulo, Pedro proclaims independence. Independence or morte. He becomes Pedro I, Emperor of Brazil. He doesn't even need a war. Most of Brazil supports him immediately. The remaining Portuguese garrisons surrender within months. Here's the twist that sets Brazil apart from Spanish America. Spanish America fragmented into 18 separate countries: Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, Peru, Bolivia, Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay, Ecuador, and so on. Partly because there was no single Spanish royal family ruling from American soil. Local leaders, military strongmen, each carved out their own nation. The Spanish Empire didn't fragment, it shattered. Brazil had Pedro, a legitimate Portuguese prince in Rio with imperial authority and broad popular support. He held the colony together as one nation. There was no civil war between provinces, no fragmentation. Brazil declared independence not as a fractured set of provinces, but as a single empire. The new Empire of Brazil was, in 1822, the size of the United States, the population of a small European country, ruled by a Portuguese-speaking emperor, bigger than France, Germany, and Spain combined. Domino 4, 1831. Pedro I abdicated in 1831 in favor of his 5-year-old son, Pedro II, who would rule Brazil for nearly 60 years and oversee its transformation into a regional power. The empire only ended 1889, when a military coup turned Brazil into a republic, but kept the same borders, same massive territory, same Portuguese-speaking single nation. The result of these 4 dominoes, a country that, by 1900, was the 5th largest in the world by area, bigger than Australia, bigger than the European Union combined, almost half of South America. And here's the kicker. Brazil is still today the only Portuguese-speaking country in the Americas. The other 20 Spanish-speaking countries surround it like a horseshoe. The cultural, linguistic, economic identity of an entire continent was shaped by 4 moments. A pope's line that was ignored, freelance explorers who became de facto diplomats, a king who fled across the Atlantic and decided to stay, and his son who refused to surrender Brazil to Lisbon. Any one of those dominoes could have gone differently. The pope's line could have been better enforced, with European armies sent to evict Bandeirantes. The Treaty of Madrid could have been cancelled successfully in 1761. There was actually a real attempt. Napoleon could have lost in 1807, and the Portuguese court never flees. Pedro could have obeyed Lisbon and returned home. Instead, Brazil exists. Almost half of a continent, speaking Portuguese, possessing the Amazon, hosting the largest Catholic population in the world, producing 40% of the world's coffee, home to 215 million people speaking one common language when the rest of South America speaks fragments of Spanish across 20 nations. 1 papal line in 1494, 4 chain reaction dominoes between 1640 and 1822. A different South America, a different world. If you enjoyed this deep dive, subscribe. We drop a new chain reaction every Wednesday and Saturday. And tell me in the comments, what's the most underrated chapter of history you wish more people knew about? The chapter that, if it had gone differently, would have changed everything. I read every comment.